This season on Married to Medicine, the tension between two of the show's most prominent stars, Quad Webb and Simone Whitmore, has escalated to a point where it's no longer about petty disagreements or misunderstandings. The cracks that have been forming for weeks have now turned into full-blown earthquakes, shaking the foundations of their friendship and leaving the entire group of women stunned. If you've been following the show, then you know the subtle hints and the passive-aggressive comments that have been building up over time. But now, it's all out in the open. Their explosive argument has become the focal point of this season, and it's making waves that we can't ignore. The relationship between Quad and Simone was always a complicated one, but over the past season, it has become clear that things are no longer as they once were. There's a level of tension in the air, and it's palpable. For those of us who have watched these two women navigate the ups and downs of their friendships, marriages, and personal lives, it's surprising to see how far things have come. What started as small jabs and quiet frustrations has now exploded into something that might be beyond repair. In the past, Simone and Quad were two women who shared a bond that transcended the typical drama of reality TV. They were part of a close-knit group of women who, despite their differences, always seemed to have each other's backs. But this season, that dynamic has shifted in ways that have left fans questioning if the friendship between these two women can ever return to its former state. The crux of the issue began when Quad started to pull away from the group. Whether it was intentional or not, Simone noticed, and for someone like Simone, who has always prided herself on loyalty and transparency, this was a major red flag. Simone didn't take too kindly to Quad's absence, and as we saw on the show, she wasn't about to let it slide without addressing it. For weeks, the ladies of Married to Medicine tried to figure out what was going on with Quad, but it wasn't until Simone directly confronted her that the full extent of the problem came to light. It's always difficult when a close friendship begins to crumble, and for Simone, the early signs were unmistakable. At first, it wasn't obvious why Quad was distancing herself, but Simone could feel it. She could sense that something was off, and it didn't take long for her to realize that Quad had been pulling away. Now, let's be clear, this wasn't a sudden shift. It had been brewing for a while, but Simone had chosen to ignore the small comments, the lack of involvement, and the moments when Quad seemed to not be fully present. In a group dynamic like theirs, it's hard for anyone to stay under the radar for long. Simone began to feel like Quad was sending subtle messages that she wasn't interested in participating fully in the group activities or maintaining the friendships that had been so important in the past. It became evident to Simone that Quad was withdrawing, and this, of course, led to some tension. But instead of letting it simmer quietly, Simone decided to address it head-on. She didn't hold back when she started calling out Quad's behavior. At first, it was subtle, just small comments about Quad being distant or about how Simone felt that things were changing. But when Quad continued to brush off her concerns, Simone's patience started to wear thin. Simone, being the straightforward person that she is, wasn't going to let this go unanswered. So, she began calling Quad out more directly, asking her why she was so distant, why she wasn't showing up, and why it seemed like she was acting like she didn't need the group anymore. This wasn't just a passing observation, it was a genuine frustration that had been building up over time. As the drama escalated, other members of the group began noticing the same thing. Some sided with Simone, agreeing that Quad had been acting distant and not fully engaged with the group. Others defended Quad, saying that she had her reasons for keeping her distance. But no matter where the others stood, one thing was clear. The group was starting to split, and things were getting messier by the day. The tension reached its peak during a group gathering, a setting that was supposed to bring everyone together, but instead became the backdrop for one of the most intense confrontations of the season. It was supposed to be a casual sit-down, a chance for the ladies to unwind and hopefully have a good time. But that wasn't what happened. As soon as the wine started flowing, the gloves came off, and Simone had had enough. In that moment, it all came to a head. Simone, frustrated with Quad's attitude and behavior, confronted her directly. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't hold back. "You've been giving us your ass to kiss," Simone said bluntly, and you could feel the energy in the room shift. That line hit a nerve, and Quad immediately snapped back. "Excuse me, who exactly have I been kissing up to? Because it sure hasn't been you." At that moment, you could feel the tension in the room thicken. It was no longer a subtle disagreement. It had turned into full-blown confrontation, and there was no going back. Simone wasn't done. She accused Quad of acting like she was too good for the group, like they were just extras in the Quad Web show. This was a direct hit, and the stakes were high. The other ladies in the room could do nothing but watch as the argument escalated. Some looked away, unsure whether to intervene or just let the drama play out, but it was clear that things were about to get even messier. Quad didn't take Simone's accusations lightly. She shot back with her own pointed remarks, saying, "I don't have time for these fake accusations. If I wanted to distance myself, trust me, you wouldn't see me at all." The confrontation was getting personal, and there was no way to salvage the situation at that point. The lines had been drawn, and the battle lines between Simone and Quad were firmly established. Just when you thought the situation couldn't get any more intense, the Married to Medicine reunion trailer dropped, teasing even more drama between Simone and Quad. If you thought their explosive argument was the end of it, you were wrong. The reunion teased round 2, and it looked like things were about to go from bad to worse. Simone was still holding on to her frustrations, accusing Quad of acting like she was above the group and alienating herself. Meanwhile, Quad was ready to fire back, accusing Simone of stirring the pot and making things worse. The reunion trailer promised more chaos, and fans were on the edge of their seats, knowing that this conflict was far from over. One of the most jaw-dropping moments came when Quad stood up and threw her hands in the air, declaring, "I'm not about to keep explaining myself to people who don't even listen." It was a bold statement, and it made it clear that Quad wasn't backing down anytime soon. At this point, the drama had reached a level that couldn't be ignored. The reunion was shaping up to be a battlefield, and it was evident that Simone and Quad weren't about to bury the hatchet anytime soon. Their feud had gone from personal frustrations to a full-on public spectacle, and it was clear that neither woman was willing to back down. Of course, with the drama unfolding on our screens, the Married to Medicine fanbase didn't stay quiet for long. Social media exploded with opinions, and it was clear that this situation had divided the fans. On one side, there were Simone's supporters, who felt she was justified in calling out Quad's behavior. Many fans agreed that Quad had been distant and acting like she was above the group. One Twitter user wrote, "Simone was saying what the rest of the ladies were too scared to say. Quad wants to come around when it benefits her, but when it's time to actually bond, she's MIA. Call it out, sis." On the other side, Team Quad came out in full force, defending her actions and criticizing Simone for being too harsh. Some fans believed Simone wasn't trying to fix things with Quad. Instead, she was just looking for a confrontation. A Reddit user stated, "Simone needs to stop acting like she's some victim. She's been shady towards Quad for seasons now. She's mad that Quad doesn't care anymore." The fans were divided, and it seemed like there was no middle ground between these two sides. The big question now is whether Quad and Simone can ever reconcile, or if this is the end of their friendship. We've seen plenty of fights on reality TV shows, but something about this one feels different. There's a level of bitterness and resentment between the two that suggests this might not be something they can simply talk through and move on from. Their fight wasn't just about small misunderstandings. It was about deeper issues like loyalty, respect, and the way each of them views their place in the group. Simone has always been about loyalty,